fortunate you are to have almost Dr. McCann here. He is an Aggie. He's a grad student in our college. He is currently the Director of Human Talent. Isn't that an awesome position? He's the Director of Human Talent for Tomball ISD. He has been with HISD and Aldine ISD. And
that's it.
That's it. A long time. So please give him your attention.
Howdy, everybody.
Howdy.
I am really, really honored to be here. I promise you that I'm going to do everything I can to make every second worthwhile. I'm going to ask you to get engaged, stand up, move around. We are going to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I know some of you are in the process of considering student teaching. I know some of you are about to select where you student teach. And then I know some of you have already selected and you're going to go out and do that very shortly. So all three groups, this presentation is really meant for you. Before we start, I want to just thank you, because without people like you, people like me couldn't be here. You are going into the most amazing profession that there could ever be, because you have a chance to be a change agent and a difference maker and really help those kids that may not know where they're going or how they're going to get there, know how to find their way and get to the destination that they're doing. A little background about me so you know where I'm coming from and where my passion and where my heart is. My mom had me when she was just a kid. Back when you were a kid, when she had a kid, you really didn't have the options that you have today. You pretty much were a high school dropout, early high school, and I'm talking early high school. Most of my academic years and most of my life was spent up and around Fort Totten Indian Reservation in the projects, living on the res from one small res town to another. And just to be very honest, teachers weren't flocking to the res to be change agents and difference makers. If you got a job on the res, it was only because in most cases you couldn't get a job somewhere else. So you would end up on the reservation. If you were good, you wouldn't be there very long. And regardless of the quality of teachers I had, I made a lot of poor decisions. When you're in school, they actually want you to periodically go to school, and they want you to do work when you're in school. I didn't really like to do either. I can think back and say, well, it was the friends I hung around with, and some of it was, but I still had to own the decisions I made. And eventually, though, I was on a res town, and I was sitting in class, and the principal / teacher, because it was a small town, comes to my class. I'd only been there for a short period of time and hadn't really done anything well when I was there, but we moved around a lot, and he gives me this sheet of paper, right? He's the principal, and he gives me this sheet of paper, and he asks me a question, and he hands me this. He says, "What is this?" Well, it had schedule on the top in the title. It had my name, so I'm like, well, if you need me to tell you what this is, maybe I'm not as dumb as I think I am. I said, well, that's my schedule. And so he said, read me your classes. And on there I took small engines and auto mechanics and, 2 classes of PE, all the things you could do at this time. Now, I don't want you to think I'm saying anything's wrong with small engines and auto mechanics, because it's not. But I don't like to get my hands dirty. And I just took it because if I took small engines and auto mechanics, I could be in the bus for 40 minutes getting to the regional Career and Technology Center. They called it a VOTEC Center, and then be there for a short period of time, standing around, messing around with engines, and then do that drive back. And so he looked at me and he said, it was, and then he rips up that schedule, and then he hands me a new schedule. And on that new schedule were math and science and English and science words I didn't even know how to really spell, to be honest with you, and I was pissed. I'm like, I self-selected my coursework and forged my mom's name so I can go into these first classes. And he said, I'm not going to change. And he said, I want you to do something before you end up getting in trouble, because he could tell I was mad. And he said, I want you to go down to the bathroom, and I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and ask if, as a parent, you want your kids to be in the same situation you're in. And if that's what you want, You come back and you pick up the schedule that's tore up on the ground, you tape it together and you follow it. If you want to be better than that, then you take this schedule and you decide that you're going to do whatever it takes to get the education that you deserve to have the limitless opportunities. His name's Ron Carlson. He's still to this day a building principal, still changing lives. That is what one educator can do. And that's the journey that hopefully all of you will take. If I ask you just within seconds, now I know that most of you are in your second or third year in college, maybe your fourth year in college. But if I were to ask you instantly, name the best teacher you've ever had, how long would it take to do that? How long? A split second, right? Split second. And you could tell me why. You could tell me, that they had a great relationship with you, they were a change agent, they held you accountable, they cared about you. But if I asked you who was the worst teacher you ever had, is there a time difference? You could do that pretty quick as well. If we met here 50 years from now, I wouldn't be here. I don't think I'd be here. But if y'all will still be around. If we met 50 years from now, we had a reunion, and I asked you the same question, who was the best teacher you ever had, and why, and who was the worst teacher you ever had, and why, guess what you'd still be able to do? Instantly answer those questions. So what I'm here to do today is kind of help you on this beginning of your journey so that when somebody asks who's the best teacher they've ever had and why, they think of who? They think y'all. And they never think about why, you never would come up in their mind if you were the worst teacher they've ever had. So what we're going to start talking about, let me finish my story. So I decided then that I wanted to do better. So I tried to apply for colleges. I didn't have the grades. I ended up going off to the military. I was in the Army. I was at Fort Bragg, Fort Benning, Fort Bliss, not in that order. And I found that I love teaching. And so when I was in Fort Bliss in El Paso, actually in New Mexico at McGregor Range, the commander came in and said, I need somebody to go to Grand Forks. There's this group of engineers. We need to retrain them into air defense, artillery, weapons that destroy aircraft that are no longer in existence. I volunteered. I got to go there. The commander there let me go back to school. That's where I met my wife. Met her in college. I'd like to tell you she fell in love with me at first sight, but she forgot my name twice. The first time, at first date, she said, "Goodnight, Chad," and then the next date, she said, "Goodnight, Steve." My name's Jeff, so it's nowhere in. There's a couple letters in common, but she eventually came around. We came to Texas in '91, thought we'd be here for a year or two. I started off as a teacher, was an assistant principal, was a building principal for 5 years. And then in 2003, I went to the HR department in Aldine, and I was there as in charge of different schools my 13 years there, whatever that math is. And I was in charge of elementaries at one time, intermediates, middle, and then my last 5 or 6 years there, I was in charge of high schools. And really started working with our university prep and building up our student teachers. Then in 2015, I went to HISD in Houston. I know it gets a lot of bad press, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of great, amazing things that go on in a district that really doesn't get any of the accolades that they deserve. Some of the best things I've seen in the entire world out of the 284 campuses that are there. My title there was the Chief Officer of Human Capital. And then when my boss, Richard Carranza, went to New York, I had the opportunity to go to New York, and I thought Houston was big. And New York's a little bigger, 1,100 schools instead of 284, 1.1 million kids instead of 216,000. And I have a junior in college at the University of Texas in the aerospace program. I tried to raise him better. I failed him. I have a freshman here at A&M, and so we just dropped him off on the 19th, and so I'll pick him up, and we'll go out and pick up a few things after this. And then we waited a couple years after those two to have kids. It actually was longer. So we have twins, a boy and a girl, that are third graders now. One's a diehard Longhorn, my baby girl, and one's a diehard Aggie. So we're going to see if we can't fix her before they get here. So when he came here, Dr. Zamora, Dr. Z from Tomball called and said, Jeff, I want you to be a superintendent. I want you to consider coming to Tomball. There's a lot more school districts like Tomball than there is in Texas like HISD. And I want you to come here and take over and develop our human talent department. So the position I'm in now is Chief of Human Talent. I went from having a 153 people team to having 7. And from 284 campuses to 20. But I love where I'm at, loved every place I've been at, because you've got to own those opportunities. So enough about me, but I wanted you to know my background and where I came from. This is not an advertisement for anywhere from the point I started on. This is really to help prep you so that wherever you go, you can be the best teacher that you can be. So why does it matter where you decide to student teach? So I'd like just take a few minutes and talk to the people around you. Why does it matter where you student teach? Brainstorm, let's just say 90 seconds, go. Okay, you guys picked something really good. The three of you, come on. Because you're going to share. Come on. Young man. Yeah, sure. Something really good. Get out of here. You want to get out of the sun? Okay, so we're going to get comfortable getting uncomfortable. You guys are going to be actors or actresses in front of students. So when you aren't paying attention, I'm going to call you up and just have you practice. Because the more you get comfortable being uncomfortable, the easier it's going to be doing the job that you're going to have to do. I have no idea what their answers are going to be. I hope they're good. But we're about to find out. So why is choosing the right location, why does it matter? So introduce yourself and say why.
My name is Brittany Schultz, and it matters because the whole student teaching experience is a learning experience, and you want to get the best out of the learning experience, so you want to be with the best mentor possible or in a school where you hope to teach later on.
Okay. That's applause. Yeah, that's good. The pressure's on, you three.
Ooh, okay. Hi, I'm Mackenzie Holland, and let me read the question again. What was it about?
Oh, great.
It's important. I think it's important to go somewhere that has a good atmosphere and encouraging people and people who love and like their job, and so that they influence you in a positive way and you have a good attitude going in, and not people who are giving you negative feedback or stuff like that.
Okay. Another one. 2 for 2. 50%.
Okay, so those are pretty similar. I'm Ashlyn Saab. I guess on the flip side, it's kind of if you do end up getting stuck, I feel like it's really important for the same reasons they say, but if you do end up going, if maybe your passion is a harder district with, you want to go learn from those teachers that have the experience with a Title I school, I think that would be really cool. Just it kind of gives you a feel for where you want to be, what grade you want to be, what kind of teacher you want to be, so I think that's really good.
I'm Nick Angie, and then I think you just want to find the right environment for you, because we're still going to be learning when we're doing our student teaching, so you want to find the best place where you can learn to be the best teacher you can be.
Awesome. Okay, y'all can have a seat. Thank you. You did really good. I'm going to lose my job, okay? I could. So what they said is really right on point. It's where you learn your craft, right? It's where you learn everything so far you've learned is theory, and great theory. But learning the theory doesn't mean anything if you can't couple it with the art of teaching. And from this point on, that's what you really need to be able to do, is fluidly adapt the theory to the kids that you have. Because in every classroom, you're going to have kids that get it, kind of get it, and don't get it. And this is your opportunity to figure out how you're going to work with those kiddos. If you're doing something at the right level of rigor, right? Because you know where your students are at, you know where you need them to be, student teaching is your opportunity to learn how to do that. What is the hardest part, do you think, about teaching? What's the hardest part? Just throw it out there. There's no wrong answers. The hardest part about teaching. So classroom management can be really hard, right? Where do you think you do the heavy lifting? Go ahead, say what you want to say, and then I didn't mean to ask a question after you had your... The parents can be a challenge. Where do you do your heavy lifting? When you're teaching, when's the work? Where's the work done? So it's done in the first day of school, but so the planning and prep part, that is where you really are going to do the heavy lifting. The planning and preparation is the work. The fun stuff is getting up. If you've done the planning and prep right, the fun stuff is getting up there and being whoever you need to be that day to get your lesson done. That's the fun part, because you've thought about all of those things that are important. You thought about the getters, kind of getters, don't getters. You thought about the personalities in the room. How are you going to group them? How are you going to do that? And as a student teacher, that's what you start getting the opportunity to practice. It's where you can make your mistakes. You are going to make mistakes all the time. It's okay. When it becomes a problem is if you continue to make the same mistakes, right? So it's where you develop your skills. It's where you begin your legacy. It's the foundation of who you will become. Now, I'm probably going to see this later, but I want to mention it now. And I'll mention it again when it comes across. Everything they said is awesome. But I would say this. If I were the ones placing you, you may not like it, but if I were placing you, I'd place you with a really good teacher, but I'd also place you with somebody that's kind of crappy every once in a while, because I think no matter where you go, you own whether you're going to be good or not. You can't blame it on the cooperating teacher that you have, because if they're crappy, you can learn what not to do. Like, that's not how I would do my transitions, and that's okay. That's not how I would have designed this lesson. That's not how I would have done this. So every single day when you go and you become a student teacher, if you want to be really, really good, the only person that's going to determine that is you, right? You're going to determine that, because you're going to think back every day and you're going to think, okay, how would I have done this differently? What would I have done better even if I was good? How can I become great? And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. Okay. So this is an individual, like just for you, because this is not something really you can do in a group, right? What do you want to get out of your student teaching? Some of it may be some of the same things we said, but I want you just for 60 seconds, a teacher 60 seconds. How long is a teacher 60 seconds? It's about 15, 20 seconds, right? Because you always want that sense of urgency. So for a teacher's 30 seconds, 60 seconds, what do you want to get out of this? Because there's no wrong answer. And then turn to somebody to your right or left and just tell them what you want to get out of this. A few seconds on your own, then chat. Tell them what, if you know, just turn and tell them. Figure out how to get their attention and you figured it out. Give them about 10 more seconds.
Okay, like a teacher 10 seconds?
Yeah.
Howdy. Well, my name is Meredith, and something that I want to get out of student teaching is to fully write out a lesson plan and implement it from start to finish, because I haven't really done that before, and that kind of is nerve-wracking. So to see that all the way through.
Awesome.
Howdy, my name's Echo. What I want to get out of student teaching is to have another teacher who's experienced watch me and see what am I doing wrong, what can I improve on, is there something I just completely messed up and need to do better next time.
Awesome, good job. All right, who else wants to share? Who else heard something, volunteer your partner. If you've heard something really, really good that they need to share, okay, just.
My name's Kaylee, and my partner Emily talked about seeing like the bigger picture of the classroom rather than just one day, because it's exciting to be in there for one day, but it's also like short stints. So to see like 5 days a week over and over again, what it looks like.
Which one? Who said that? Good job. So all of those things, and here's what's great about what they all said, but that level of comfort, like you being the novelty, that's going to wear off pretty quickly. And so getting that extended period of time in front of those kiddos really will test you. And they're going to expect like your A game from the second you get in there every Monday to the second you leave on Friday. Anybody else before we move to this slide with some of the things I put? So here's what I think in addition. I think just like, who said something earlier? Let me find her. It challenges me so I can find out who said that. Okay, right? Yeah, raise your hand. Okay. So I think that's 100% right. I think if you can find something that's easy, are you going to learn as much? No, maybe find something a little bit out of your comfort zone to challenge you. You want a location that could make you better, a place that's going to give you the opportunity to actually lead the class. The awesome thing about the program here at Texas A&M is it's a co-teach focus. So you're not sitting there waiting to get a lesson, right? You really jump in early on. The more that you can get involved from the second you get into a classroom, walk around one-on-one with students, listen to what they're saying, let them get comfortable with you circulating in that room, seeing what they're doing, informally assessing. If you see something wrong, that's the time to get in to adjust as you're monitoring and build that relationship with those kiddos. So take advantage of every single second. You want to find a spot that's supportive, nurturing, developing. This was mentioned too, the spot that may hire you when you're done. That is a huge advantage, because if you get hired where you student teach, it's almost like the first year is really like your second year, because you've been there a whole semester, even if it's not in the same school, and a lot of times it will be. It's in the same district, so you already know what district resources are in place. And then different districts do different things differently. So when you're out looking, if you haven't already secured your location, do they have more of a prescriptive approach? I've been in places where, they'll give you like a menu and then you have to deliver it. And now I'm on the polar opposite of that, where everything that teachers do where I'm at now is basically discussed through the PLC and done individually. And there's nothing predetermined. Like, you basically have the curriculum and you work in your PLCs within your department and your team to decide how you're going to implement that lesson. And then I think this is probably the most important thing. Find a place that really is going to say, we're going to monitor where you're at and help you grow and develop. And in helping you grow and develop isn't walking through your classroom every once in a while and saying, good job. No matter how good you are, if I'm working with you, I will always, and this is not anything against you, I will always find something that you could do better. And that's what you want to really push whoever's working with you, is challenge them. So what can I do better? Don't ever let them say you couldn't do anything better, because if they say that, then they're probably not knowledgeable enough, because none of us are ever as good as we can be. We can always get better. Don't ever settle with, okay, that went really well, I'm happy with it. Tear it up. Rip it apart so that when you do it the next time, it's going to go from really good to great. So how do you find these locations? How have somebody share in here how they, if you raise your hand if you already secured your student teaching location. Oh, none of you have yet? Okay, well, this is great. I thought some of you already had, I guess. So how are you going to find out where to student teach? Somebody share their game plan.
Research.
Okay. So that's perfect. Make connections. Okay. Any other ideas? Yes. Yeah, look in the area. Now, I'm not sure, if I say anything that's opposite of what your university, take mine off, like scratch mine out, right? A&M knows better about what they're doing with you than I could ever do that, right? So if I say anything that doesn't align with your university, default to what they tell you at your university. I wouldn't recommend going somewhere where it's just easy. Like if I grew up in this place, what I want, so let me give you an example. If I grew up in College Station, would I want to go to the same school I was at as a high school student? No. I could probably go to College Station, but I want to go to a different school so that they're not thinking of me as the student that was there and I'm still a student to them. So find a spot that really will press you by researching. And then the third bullet, I think, is the best. School districts will open up their doors if you want to come and visit. If you just call their HR department and say, hey, I'm trying to look for a place that can do this for me as a student teacher, can I come to visit? And most school districts will say, absolutely, what day do you want to come? They'll have you come to the office, they'll give you a schedule, sometimes they'll accompany you, sometimes they'll send you out on your own. And you get a chance to walk through those halls and feel, where can I really get everything I'm looking for out of this placement? Because I guarantee you, if you do all that stuff, you're going to discover the right place for you where you could have the best chance to be successful. Okay, so this thing, I'm going to ask you to stand up and find somebody that you don't know to answer this question, right? So what should did we already talk about that? Okay, we haven't. So what should I do as a student teacher? I know some of these are repetitive. What should I do as a student teacher? Find out somebody that you haven't chatted with, stand up, go to them, 2 minutes, be back. What should you do? You got to figure out how to get the mob under control. Give them about 30 minutes.
Okay, so what should I do as a student teacher? Something that I would do is just ask for opportunity, because the more opportunity you get and can have different situations to deal with, the more ready you will be when you have your own classroom.
Yeah, so I kind of said the same thing, pretty much, just like challenge myself and gain experience from the teacher, the mentor that I get.
So hopefully you heard some good things. Some of the things I would suggest that sometimes you don't think about, right? So in addition to everything that you've heard, if you didn't hear this or you haven't thought about this, ask to visit classrooms. Try to get into as many rooms as you possibly can get into. So let me ask you this. How many of you in here are reading teachers? Okay, I'm going to ask you, everybody. Okay, how many of you are reading teachers? Raise your hand. Okay, so every one of you, whether you realize it or not, guess what you teach? Reading, because no matter what content you have, you can't actually really do it with fidelity unless you understand the literacy part of it and the writing part of it. So if you're not somebody that's in a reading classroom, get into those classrooms as much as you can, given any opportunities, and understand how that works. And integrate those skills and those strategies into your classroom. Because where kids really struggle in a lot of other content areas is not so much with the content, it's trying to understand what do I do with that content and can I understand it, because they sometimes just can't comprehend it. So get into those classrooms as much as you can. Try different strategies, right? Again, get comfortable being uncomfortable. How many of you like to sing in front of people? Like who, let me ask you this. Let me ask a better way. Like how many of you hate singing in front of somebody? Just hate it. How many of you hate singing in front of people? Just raise your hand. I have to be proud of it. Okay. So I'm going to model something. So I think that I sound really, really good. Problem is, I've not met anybody that's ever thought that before, right? So you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So when students, right? So let's take a time out, pause, right? So I need to pick on somebody that's not going to have to do anything. Young lady, can you have a mean face? Can you practice a mean face? Okay. You stand right there. You're in the hallway. So this is our classroom, right? We're all the students. Prior to students coming in, where should I be? Where should I be? This is our classroom. Here is the inside and here's the outside. Where should I be? Inside, outside, or over there? Right outside my door, right? And if, come here. So she's mad. She's walking in here and I say, what's wrong? What is, because I know she's mad, right? I see it. What do you think she's going to say if I say, what's wrong? What's the matter? Nothing. Nothing's matter. But in my mind, I don't really care what she says. I do, but I know I'm going to get the answer of what? Nothing. No matter how I ask it, I'm going to get nothing. So in our classroom, this safe and secure environment that we practice creating, I have to figure out what strategy is going to be. What's your name? Adriana. What is going to work best with Adriana so that before she comes into this room, whatever's driving her crazy out there or making her mad doesn't come in here and affect everybody else, right? And not just affect everybody else, but continue to cause her not to have the limitless opportunities that she deserves. So when I ask that question, like so many people do, hey, what's wrong? As much as that sounds great, every kid's going to say nothing, right? They're not going to sit and tell you their life story. I'm not going to find out what's wrong with Adriana by asking her right then and there. I may not find out ever what's wrong with Adriana. So go back, Adriana. And so mean mug, give me a mean look. She's walking at me, and all of a sudden, okay, no, you got to do your best. You got to do it better than that. Okay, like mean, like you. Okay, so then kind of do it in slow motion. So I have to figure out what I'm going to do with different kids, with different students in my class. And I know because I've sung before, Adriana just thinks I'm the worst singer in the world, right? I have to figure out instantaneously what's going to work with her. So she starts walking, and I'm like, why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? Now, what do you think, Adriana? I know I'm pretty good. That would be but because I'm so bad, it works so good. So what's going to happen with her is she's going to be like, oh my gosh, Mr. McKenna, what, seriously? And what do you think's going to happen with that mindset that she has? It's going to change off. And I'm going to say, hey, let's have a good day. And she's going to walk in because I need to take her mind off. And I might say, hey, everything's going to be all right. I'm not going to ask her a specific question. She's going to know that in a safe and secure environment, if she needs to talk with me, I'm here for her to talk to. But I'm going to read that with every one of my kids. You have to really practice these different strategies and get out of your comfort zone and not just be you every single day, because my gosh, the kids are going to get tired of you. They have you for 177 days or whatever minutes that equates to now. They have you a long time. They need to not know who you're going to be that day. You know, they have no clue. That throws them for a loop. Now, kids still need consistency in the classroom. I'm not talking about throw off all the routines and procedures. I'm talking about the other things about who you are at that time to pull off that lesson. It might be the way you're dressed. It might be the room design. It may be something so that you can get them to get to where they need to be. Experience everything. And that doesn't mean just going to the football games. Like, go to the volleyball games, go to the soccer games, go to the softball games, go to whatever they do, go to the clubs, go to the debate events. Go, and it seems like a lot, but your student teaching is not a marathon. It's a sprint. It's only one semester. And in this sprint, it really means 16 to 18 hours some days. And it's not 5 days a week. You really have to, if you want the most out of student teaching, this is a sprint and you have to take in everything. And I'm telling you, when you show up after school or you show up before school or you're in the cafeteria for duty or you're at the bus for bus arrival or bus dismissal, all of those things help build a relationship between you and the kiddos, you and your peers, you and the leaders, and you and your parents. And they're going to really demand that you're given the opportunity to work at that campus. And if there's not a spot there, you're going to get a job somewhere else just because of everything that you did by experiencing everything. Whatever you're the least uncomfortable with, that's what you want to start working on in slow chunks, right? So that you get more comfortable with it. Before we go on, I want to give you an example of a group I was working with in Iowa. I went in and I worked with the University of Iowa State, Cole College, Upper Iowa, Dubuque, and I happened to be in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. This was a small group, came in every night, a different group, and they were in like these cohorts. And this group was a Wednesday night group. Terry McNabb, Dr. McNabb was facilitating it. She was in charge of their education department and student teaching. And they were in this horseshoe. And she starts the meeting by, tell me how everything went from last Wednesday to this Wednesday. And then I was going to chat with them. And one young lady got up and she said, today was horrible. And she starts crying. Like, and I'm not a big crier, y'all, but like if somebody starts crying, like I kind of start crying too. I do. I'm like, I don't know why, but that's like the empathetic side of me. Like even as much as I want to maintain my composure, I'm like, oh no, just a second. And so she's like, she was in band and the teacher didn't show up that day. They didn't get a sub. She'd only been doing it for about 3 weeks, so it wasn't that far into the year. 2 kids came in and they were flicking each other's bills, right? The bill of a hat. So they were friends. She knew that because she'd been working with them for a few minutes, for a few weeks. And pretty soon she looks up and guess what they're doing? All out fist fight. She goes to the choir teacher next door, runs to the choir teacher next door, comes back, and there were 2 other fights in the room. All out battle royal. 3 fights in the room. And she said, I just couldn't get past that day today. It just was bad. And she goes, makes me question whether I want to do this or not. And then a young man said, well, I almost got in a fight with a parent. And I was like, why? And he said, well, this was second semester and they have, somehow or another, they have the skip day set up. And it happened to be the Friday before, and this was that Wednesday, so ironic, same day, the parent comes in because if they skipped, the kids got, guess what grades? Got all zeros. So the cooperating teacher wanted to meet with the dad, and so he says to the dad, well, it's kind of your fault. Like, you knew he was going to be gone, so, I mean, we can't give you a 0, so we've got to give him a 0, like, you're the parent. And the dad got pissed. You know, it was like they started arguing, and then the next person they were struggling, and then Terry looked at me and she said, Jeff, I'm so sorry. She said, we usually don't have these bad of meetings. And I said, this is amazing. I hope it gets worse. And they look at me, and she's got all puffy eyes, and he's looking, you know, he was worked up. I said, let's just stop for just a second and go back. So I went back to the young lady, and I said, tell me what you learned today. If you could do today all over again, tell me what you do differently. She said, I should have been at my door when those kids were flipping the bill, right? She said, I should have told them to stop. I knew they were playing around, but I should have known better. I should have told them to take their hats off, come in, and start the warm-up. And she said, the other thing I noticed is that there, right by the door, there's this black button that if I push it, it will call the front office, and they will send somebody down, and thus I wouldn't have to run out of the classroom, and 2 more fights wouldn't have developed. I said, what else did you learn? She said, I learned that I need to have kids, 2 or 3 kids in every class identified, so if there is an emergency, that somebody will push the button, somebody will go get help. So in case anything happens. I said, what an amazing thing you learned today. Out of your worst day, that one bad day is going to give you so many more great days down the road. The young man said, you know, what I should have done is I should have said to the dad, hey, I really appreciate you coming in, because a lot of parents may not. I appreciate you coming in. That's an administrative policy. You know, you need to really go talk to the principal about it. I'm just really following our policy, and you could talk with them. If they want me not to give them a 0, then I won't give them a 0. You see what I'm saying? So every day when something bad goes wrong, turn it into a positive. Think about it and figure out what really went, what you could have done differently. Does anybody have a journal? Can I borrow this for just a second? I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to close it. Okay, so, and then I'll give it back to you. So these, you see ones that are similar like this, the black and white ones that are like a quarter? So here's something to think about when you start student teaching, is journaling your experience. And what I do every single night to this day, no matter how busy I am, I take my journal and I put the date on the very top, and I jot some notes down about that day. And I try to do 2 things. I bookend the good things, right? I think, did I do today that I'm really, really proud of? And then I write that down. And then I'll put, if I could do today all over again, what would I do differently? And then what do I want to really focus on tomorrow? If I'm given the opportunity to wake up and live another day, what am I going to really work on tomorrow to be a better me that I could be? And then what's the last thing is, what other thing do I do that I'm like, I want to give myself a pat on the back? Because we as human beings, we don't celebrate the wins enough. And what we really focus on is all the things that we're not doing right. So every night, take some time, because when you're student teaching, you may not realize there's wins unless you really think about them. It's that look that, you know, Gail has. It's that question that Mark finally answers. You know, it's that David has finally started participating in class. It's those things that may not seem like a big thing unless you really think about it. Celebrate your wins, not just in the sprint of student teaching, but in the marathon of your career, because sometimes we get so lost in what's negative that it brings us down, because you all are going to write a lot of emotional checks. And I promise you that there are going to be so many days that you feel like those checks are bouncing, because deposits aren't going to come in for a while. Just hate to tell you that. But your deposits for the emotional checks that you write as a student teacher, a first-year teacher, second-year teacher, third-year teacher, they may not come for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years. The first deposit that I finally got was from my first year of teaching, and it was actually my first week as a principal. First deposit. All that time of writing emotional checks and doing everything I could above and beyond the call of duty, I finally got a deposit. And I didn't actually get it necessarily in person. I'm out. It's my first week, first couple weeks as a principal. I'm helping the custodian, the school. I got named in the end of a year, so I'm starting summer school. Had never been the principal yet. We're getting part of the school ready, so we're moving around desks. We're getting rooms clean so that we could get kids ready to come in. And I go back to my desk, and there's a sheet of paper on my desk, and it wasn't a Hallmark card, wasn't a 5-paragraph essay. It was, Mr. McCanna, I'm in college today, and I owe it all to you. Thanks, Reginald Wright. Huge deposit, huge deposit. It took a lot of years to get it. And I wasn't the only reason that Reginald was in school. He thought I was. I was just part of the puzzle. And I'm telling you that because, and so now, if you were to walk into my office, it took 6 years to get something this thick, right? The only way you can get in my deposit pile if I was your teacher for 3 years. I mean, I taught for 3 years. The only way you can, it doesn't matter if I was your principal AP, any other role, it doesn't go into that stack of the teacher stack. It's now over a foot tall. A foot tall. It took 6 years just to get one piece. And I'm telling you that not because I want you to think, oh, Jeff McCann must have been a good teacher. I'm telling you that because when you go out and you're a change agent and you're a difference maker, you plan purposely, you work relentlessly, you write emotional checks after emotional checks after emotional checks, hang in there because eventually the deposits will start coming in. And had I have left the field like most teachers do within the first 5 years, a lot, not most, but a bigger percentage than should, I would have never seen any of that. And I tell you that because this is where you start your career as a student teacher. This is where you start right now, the things that you do, the decisions that you make, from where you go to student teach, to how you student teach, to where you get your job and how you do your job each and every day. And you have to own your own happiness. Because if you're counting on somebody else to pat you on the back and tell you a lot, you're awesome, it's probably not going to happen, y'all. They'll maybe say that, but it won't be enough. So you have to own your own happiness and don't let anybody dip into your bucket. The resume part, we're going to get to if we get to, okay? Because your university does a lot of that. We're going to practice a few things before we get here. And if we get to this resume stuff, we'll get to it. But what I want to talk about now, so you are going to pick where you student teach, right? You're going to go out, you're going to be awesome, you're going to be beasts at student teaching. Okay, so we're going to say now you're student teaching in this great spot. You understand it's a sprint. It's not a marathon. You're working 7 days a week. You still are thinking about yourself. You're celebrating your wins. It's going to be eventually time to get hired. So from this mode, we're going into the hire mode, right? Because I don't want you just to be a great student teacher and not get a job. So let's talk about this. So depending on the district, you're going to have an interview. Right? And it could be one of many interviews. It could be a campus interview, a district interview, a panel interview, any of those things. Eventually, you're going to have to, and I'm going to come back to the application. We're going to go to this. I'll come back to that in just a second. But we're getting into the interview part, right? How many of you feel comfortable being interviewed? Okay, good. So what do you think so the purpose of the interview is to learn about you, right? Your strengths, maybe what challenges you, to see if you really understand the district. What do you think the most common question will be asked in an interview? Turn to your neighbor real quick. There's a question that's asked almost all the time. What do you think it's going to be? I'm going to say one of you three is going to get it. You can. I know. I can tell you're excited, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Sorry.
And you can't get it wrong. I think the most common question may be this, and then just pass it on.
Okay.
And you just figure out how you're going to get their attention.
Do you want, like, whenever? Or do you want to go now?
You guys begin it, yeah.
Okay.
Introduce yourself.
Okay, hi, I'm Alex. So I think the most common question asked in an interview might be either, like, why you want to work there, like, why you chose to apply to that school.
Okay.
I'm Reagan, and I think the most common question asked are, what are your strengths and your weaknesses?
Okay.
I'm Kristen. I think the most common thing is that they're going to ask you, like, why you want to be at that school or the district, like what stood out to you.
Okay, give them all applause. Good answer. Okay. So y'all can have a seat, and those are common questions. So we're going to practice something. I'm going to tell you, so a while back I wrote a book, and in order to write a book, they want it to not be your own perceptions, anecdotal perceptions. They really want research. So I sent surveys out to school districts across the state of Texas and across the country. And I asked them a few questions. I asked them, among other things, this is just one small part of that book. What questions do you ask? What are you hearing? And what do you want to hear? When you interview a teacher, what are you asking them? What are you hearing? And what do you want to hear? Compiling all of those surveys, almost 100%, like as close to 100% as you could get, asked one common question. This is all across the United States, right? And that question was, why do you want to be a teacher? Okay? So we're going to practice a little bit, right? So you know that's going to be a question that statistically you're probably going to get asked. You know that long before you're interviewing. So we're going to practice. So I want you to stand up next to somebody. Here's what I want you to do, right? So let's come on for just a second. So I'm Jeff McKenna. I am a physics teacher. I really don't even know how to spell physics hardly, but I like saying that. And so I want to be a teacher because, and then I'd share my answer, right? And then you would introduce yourself and you'd say why you want to be a teacher. Okay, but I want you to practice this. I want you to introduce yourself and I want you to shake somebody's hand. That is honestly one of the first impressions that you're going to make, is that eye contact and that handshake. And you're going to do that in times where there's probably hundreds of people around, and you want that person that you're communicating with to think that you are the only person in the world at that point in time. Everything else is tuned out, and you've got to get comfortable getting uncomfortable. So introduce yourself, and when I say howdy, that means stop, and then thank them, give them a high five. You know, if you're great friends, give them a hug. Whatever you do, just say thanks, good job, pat them on the back, and then have a seat. Okay? So go ahead and find somebody, and then we're going to do about 3 minutes. Why do you want to be a teacher? But you got to stand up. Okay, wrap it up and then have a seat. All right. Who heard something awesome? Who heard something really, really good? I hope somebody did. Because you're going to volunteer your neighbor. You're not volunteering yourself. So okay. Who from her? Yeah. Okay, give her the microphone.
Hi, I'm Vivian. Okay. Oh, darn. Well, I just said that I really just love to inspire students to pursue learning and become explorers in a field of study or something, so they can just keep opening doors to their future that wouldn't have been possible without it.
Anybody else? One more. Somebody else. Nobody heard anything good. Okay, well, I'll let you think about that and we'll come back because you owe me one. So remember I said 3 things. What are you asking? What are you hearing? And what do you want to hear? What they're hearing when they ask that question almost 95% of the time is some version of I love kids. 100% of the time, almost, that question is asked, and 95% of the time the answer is I love kids. Well, pedophiles love kids. Yeah, it's probably not a good, just that in itself. So what I'm challenging you with is if you know that question is going to come down the road, here's what I'd like you to do. Can I borrow this again? In your trusty journal that you have just as a student teacher, put in the top, why I want to be a teacher, on one of the first sections. And every single time from this point on, whether it's in a methods class or student teaching, whatever time you work with kids, when you have one of those aha moments, journal it. Put it in there. No matter what it happens, if you think about it too, this is why I want to do this. This is why I want to do this. How cool is it going to be when you actually get asked that question and you give a different answer than 95% of the other people, and you've actually had time to really, really, truly think and evaluate it. And I would be just blown away if we're in an interview and I say, hey, why do you want to be a teacher? And you pull out that journal and say, I thought about that, and these are the reasons. I'm going to share a few of them with you, but this is what I came up with. All of these reasons are why I want to work with kids, why I want to be a change agent and a difference maker, and why I want to give them the limitless opportunities that they deserve. That's generally a question on the front side. Imagine how great the rest of your interview is going to be if you knock that out of the park. And really, I think you need to be more reflective. Even if you're never going to get asked that question, I think there needs to be something more than just you love kiddos. And you should. You should love kids. This is a kid business. And if you said that, that's great. I don't want to minimize that part. That part, without that passion, without that focus, without that dedication, without that relentlessness, over time, if you don't love what you're doing and don't love the kiddos you're working with, then you'll never, ever have a career out of it. The other thing I want to say when we, just because it's kind of a teachable moment, when you get out into your classroom, it's going to be easy to love the kiddos that walk in with all their supplies, their homework done, that when they have a question, they ask it. When you have a question, they answer it. When they're well-mannered, when they're polite, when they do the things that they need to do. I mean, that's pretty easy. What I want to challenge you with is love the kids you don't like. Because you're not going to like some of your kids, and that's okay. But you still have to love them. And when you love the kids you don't like, you do that by planning the right lessons, by understanding, by being empathetic, by no matter how bad they were yesterday, here's what throws people off. No matter how bad my kids were in whatever situation, when I see them the next time, I act like they just got back from deployment. I act like I hadn't seen them in 10 years. They're like, what the hell is going on here? I would, because what you do when you love the kids you don't like and you care for them regardless and you have that unconditional love, you make it over time almost impossible for them to be not great for you because they know you care for them. You don't have to tell them that. Words mean nothing. They're going to know you love them by your actions. And you do that by not, sometimes we learn behaviors like if we're in a relationship and we have a bad communication time period, we kind of hold a grudge. Somebody didn't call when they said they were, this isn't a relationship with that kind of relationship. This is no matter how bad, you have to model how you overcome that. And by loving the kids you don't like, you're putting them in that right situation so that you can be successful. That is a great practice. It's easier said than done, but I promise you that it makes it easier for the job that you're going to do. Okay, so let's talk about what were some of the, I'll leave. I'm going to push pause on that in just a second. I'm going to come back to that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, so campus interviews. When you interview at a campus, how is that going to be different than maybe a job fair interview or a district interview? How's that going to be different, do you think? Huh? It's probably going to be more formal. Like a district, when they interview at the district screening, they're just looking big picture. They're going to ask you big picture things. So to get prepped for a district interview, you just find out about the district. Now, I still would want to be able to articulate some things about campuses I really, really want to go to, but it's more of a big picture. The campus is really, really important because they're looking to hire you. Either they have a job or they anticipate a job. Make sure that you know that campus and you visualize, because they're trying to visualize you in room 103, right? If every question, how would you work with my team? What are some ways you can get ready for that interview? How can you prep for the campus interview? Visit the campus ahead of time, know where it's at, the community it serves. What else can you see? What else can you take a look at? Yes, ma'am.
Could you look at their website?
Look at their website. Even if, I know you all can read, but even if you can't, you can just look at a campus website and you can tell what's important around there by looking at what? The pictures. What they put on their website, the pictures of what they do. You can tell if PLCs are important because there's going to be a lot of pictures about PLCs. You can tell if activities and stations are important because there's a lot of things, community involvement. Use those websites and find out as much as you can. Okay? And then the panel. How many of you are nervous about this? So this is tough. And what I would suggest that you do is you Google some questions and you get with your friends, right? All of you know each other to some extent. And if you don't practice, like the first time you do a panel interview shouldn't be for a job, right? So if we all know each other, us 6, we can practice that. And if we really care for each other and want each other to be successful, as I'm being asked questions by these 5, they pick it apart. Well, make sure you're making eye contact with me when all of us. Make sure that you think about adding this into your answer. Practice those things before you get to that part of it. And sometimes they might say, hey, I want you to do a lesson. Sometimes it's impromptu. They might give you some content and say, hey, put this together. Just give us a 15-minute commercial of what you would do in this situation. Now, the great thing is, what are you going to do as a student teacher? Lessons. And so that's not going to be hard to do. And I would understand those lessons really deeply so that if you're asked to pull one out of the hat, you can actually have one ready or something in mind of how you're going to pull it off. Okay. We're going to talk about those things in just a second. So we're going to practice first. That question I just gave you, why you want to be a teacher, you've thought about it, right? A little bit more. So now what I want you to do is I want you to find somebody different and I want you to act like this is the real interview with that same question. Now that you've even had just a short period of time, and I don't want you to do anything except for flip-flop, right? So one of you will ask that question, and then the other one will answer it. So I'm going to ask, why do you want to be a teacher? And then you're going to tell me, and then you're going to ask me why I want to be a teacher, or why I chose the profession, and I'm going to answer it. Okay, somebody different, not one of your friends that you know really well. I want you to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and then we're going to dissect this part of it. Because this part right now is the hardest thing you're going to have to do. If you can get comfortable interviewing standing up in a hard question like this, everything else is going to be easier. Okay, so find somebody you don't know, introduce yourself, and ask that question, answer it, and then we'll come back. Okay, perfect. Okay, now finish, but go back to this spot right here. I wouldn't do this. Okay, I've been trying to figure out. Look at that. You know, I've been trying to figure out. So what you want to be able when you're listening is you don't want to like open like this. You just have to figure out what's going to be the best way to practice. So it happens. Okay, y'all. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I've overheard some things, and what's hard about that? Somebody just share like what is tough about doing that. There's a lot of tough stuff about it. What was hard about that? Yes.
Okay, for me it was difficult to articulate what I was trying to say, especially because even though I sort of thought about it briefly with the first question, like I remembered something else that made me want to teach while I was answering this time. It's like, oh no, I'm supposed to be doing this as if it was real, and I'm stumbling over my words a lot.
That's okay.
So, yeah.
It's hard sometimes coherently putting everything together, and that's normal. That's why we're practicing.
I think what can be difficult with that is it's like I don't know how long to go because like I can give the quick like 1-2 sentence short answer, or if I really think about it I could probably go on for a few minutes. So it's like I guess in the case of an actual interview I'm like how long, like do they want my short answer? Do they want my long answer? Do they want in the middle? Where do I stop?
So y'all, we're gonna couldn't have done a better lead-in. We're gonna practice this a few more times with some more critiques. And one of the things that you're going to probably get asked is tell me a little bit about yourself. And I wouldn't say, well, I was born in 19 blah, 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 and then I did this. A little bit about yourself. And that's going to be the fine line that you have to walk. And how you do that is you say things very clearly and concisely, but you have to be reading the person like they're a book. Like they're going to tell you when they want more, and they're going to tell you like, okay, wrap this up. And it's trying to figure that out. It's trying to figure that line where I'm going to get everything in really good. It's always better. Brevity is always better than just going on and on and on. Because if it's not, if they want a little bit more, they'll ask for it. But most people aren't rude enough to say, okay, God, please stop already. That's a lot. So just be mindful of that. What's the biggest challenge that I would say as a spectator, about 75% of you really, 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 really struggled with? From visually me just watching, not listening, but seeing. Eye contact was tough for some of you. Okay. Say it.
Talking with our hands.
Yes.
Is that a bad thing?
Like, what do you do with your hands? Right? I mean, hands are an awesome thing to have, and the arms with them, like they're great. But the problem is, what do I do with them? So a lot of you, what were a good chunk of you doing with your arms? Just be. So sometimes this was common, like this, right? I mean, it's where I don't know what to do with my hands, so I'm going to put them in the best place I can so they don't get in the way. That's right here. That probably doesn't look the best. Well, it doesn't, right? But it's normal. This is what happens when you don't know what to do with your hands. Or this, right? Or, playing with, like moving your hands around. What you want to do is you want your hands to supplement what you're saying. And you have to find a fine line between using them too much and them being a distraction and them reinforcing what you're trying to say. The only way to get better at that is to do what? Practice. It is. It's just, and you've got to videotape it. If you really want to get good, you have to videotape what you're doing so that you can self-assess. And then you also have to have friends that like you enough to want to tell you, hey, that doesn't look good, right? Because everybody can tell you good things. It's your true friends that can, in a nice way, say, that doesn't work. That isn't working for you. And then maybe give you some possible suggestions. What's another thing that you struggled with? Eye contact, yes, was another one.
When I was interviewing, you don't know what kind of curveball question they ask, like why you want to teach 8th grade.
So you are going to get questions that you don't necessarily know, and that's okay. And the other thing is, as we practice, if you're not super nervous when I ask you that first question, I'm concerned, right? Because I know and understand that if you've worked 4 or 5 years to get to this spot and you want to be working with our team and you've done everything you can, your nerves are going to be there, right? Because you want something. Your nerves should be there. Here's what happens though. Because you've really, really become well prepared through student teaching and the training you've got at A&M, guess what happens to those nerves as you start talking? It gets easier. And you have to have that mentality, and I hope this comes out right, because sometimes when I say it, it doesn't, is like nobody is going to beat me out. Like that competitive side, like in my mind, every job I've interviewed, I've gotten. And sometimes I'm not the most qualified for it. Sometimes I may not know all the answers, but nobody's going to out-prepare me. Nobody's going to outwork me, and nobody's going to go in there with more passion than I have to get that job. Because I won't go for any job unless I know that if I got the job, I would do the very best I could at it. I would never go for a job and settle. That's the same kind of focus, passion, and dedication that you have to have going into these interviews. Now, when you're at a job fair, you're not necessarily, you may not have that skill set, but you still want to bring your A game. You still want to stand out for when those opportunities come. Does that make sense? Okay. So the hands is a big thing, and the eye contact. And the eye contact is just as important for the listener as it is for you interviewing. Because when you're listening, guess what you're also doing? If I'm interviewing you for a job, I'm looking as much at you and dissecting everything you do by how you listen and how you comprehend what I'm saying, and then do you take that and run with it. So I'm going to give you this is not going to practice, but I'm going to ask you a question. Hey, sir, how you doing? Good. If I were to walk into your classroom any given day, right? So I'm going to try to trick you. What would you be doing? And what would your kids be doing? So in my mind, I'm wanting you to think about that, right? And I'm looking at, if I were to walk into your classroom on any given day, what would you be doing and what would your kids be doing? And what did I emphasize? You, right? Now how are you going to answer that? Somebody just be brave enough to say how you're really going to answer that question. Somebody that hasn't answered yet. Yes. Okay, they're visualizing you in that classroom, you walking around, but I'm really, really trying to press you. What would you be doing and what would the kids be doing? Who do I really want to hear about? And I'm trying so hard to emphasize you, but who do I really want to hear about? The kids. Because what your brain should default to, no matter how I ask that question, what would you be doing and what would the kids be doing? Guess who you really should default to? The kiddos. So if you were to walk into my classroom on any given day, here's what my students would be doing. It kind of depends on the day, but I have stations and centers. I understand that I'm going to differentiate. You don't want to use just the words, but you want to articulate how they're going to do those different things. Are you with me? So always think about the kiddos first. Okay, so we're going to practice. Each one of you is going to do one more question, then we're going to move on. So one group is going to, first of all, I'll tell you what the question is in just a second. I'm going to have you find somebody else. We're going to do 2 questions, a different one for each of you. Then we're going to wrap this up, put a tie on it, and then give it away. We'll be done with this part, and then you have to practice on your own. It'd be a home opportunity for you down the road. So find one last time, one person that you haven't met with yet, introduce yourself, and I want you to, this is the question that you're going to ask them. Tell me about yourself and what you want to be as a teacher. Tell me about yourself and what you want to be as a teacher, okay? That's going to be the first question. Then I'll tell you what the second one is that you'll flip-flop. So find somebody and we ask them that question. And I'm going to put it up on the... Okay, pause for a second. So now we're going to flip. And so I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do because I don't want you to freak out a little bit. So what I started doing, what I'm going to do is at a job fair, what happens is what? People will interrupt you. They'll get in your space. They'll want to overhear what you're saying. They're going to answer questions. So I've been going up to people and putting them in awkward situations, freaking them out a little bit. It's all really in the name of practice. So don't let me distract you, okay? So now for the other person, I want you to tell me about, and you're just going to have to do your best, right? A lesson that went really, really well, and how did you come up with the idea? Okay? A lesson that went really, really well, and how did you come up with the idea? Okay? And you're going to have about 2 minutes, 120 seconds, real 120 seconds. Okay, go. Okay, give your partner a high five, shake their hands, and have a seat. Okay, y'all, I'm really, really proud of you. First of all, from when we did that first question to when we did the last, I don't know if you all felt more comfortable or not, but you looked a lot better. It's hard. It's hard to do, stand up, figure out what you're going to do with your arms when the room is really noisy. You're trying to think about how you're going to respond, and it takes practice. And so keep practicing because you got a bunch of time in front of you to get prepared. Tell me about yourself and your teaching experience. And I'm going to give you some common questions, a few of them, and then we're going to do something different. So, what are you asking? What do you want to hear? And what are you hearing, right? Across the United States. So another common question is, tell me about yourself and your teaching experience. So if you've never taught yet, what word are they going to put in front of teaching? Student teaching. Yep. What they really, really want to hear, and this is the same everywhere, is that the focus was on who? Your kiddos. What you did and how you did it was based on where your kids are at and where you need to get them, right? Student-centered. That you did more than just what you were supposed to do. If I student taught and I was in 3rd grade doing literacy and that's all I did, I didn't really do anything more than what's expected. So what did I do? Well, I volunteered and helped the math teacher work with their kids. I volunteered and I did this, I did that. The other thing, and some of you asked me, what's PLCs? So if you haven't gotten to that class yet, Professional Learning Communities is the abbreviation for PLCs. And that collaboration is wherever you go, if they are top-notch, high-performing school district with any group of kids, they have what's called professional learning communities. These are not team meetings. These are collaborative discussions that happen on a daily or several times a week basis that dissect what needs to happen in the classroom with your kiddos and how you're going to accomplish that. And I want to share with you something I tweeted out this morning. Well, let me say this. I retweeted this. So I can't take any credit for it. But this is about PLCs. Because this is critical. And this is from one of the gurus of PLCs. And Paula works in Tomball, but she is a presenter nationally. And if I had to pick anybody in the world, regardless of where I work, to talk about how to truly, again, all over the United States, I would get Paula to do this. So she says, if you are not collaborating about learning and focused on how to improve instruction to guarantee high levels of learning for all, you are not operating as a PLC culture. You are meeting together about stuff, and there is a difference. That's what a professional learning community is. And that's really a big thing that you're going to find when you go into the school districts. Every district I've been involved in has PLCs. And it's about that collaborative conversation that you're going to have about instruction and how you're going to adapt it to meet the needs of your kids. When they're talking about yourself and your teaching experience, that relationship with peers is critical because they're looking for a certain piece of the puzzle. And you yourself may be awesome, but if you can't get along with everybody else and build up that culture instead of tearing it down, they're probably not going to look at you. If it's an I instead of we, or if it's a me instead of we mentality that you have, you're probably not going to be a good fit. And they're also going to want to hear through being able to see and hear about your excitement, enthusiasm for the profession. They also, when I talk about, differentiation, right? Kids that get it, kind of get it, don't get it. And if they may ask, if you have 22 kids in your classroom, how do you differentiate instruction? Right? How do you do that? And so unfortunately, a lot of times when people hear differentiation in 22, they may say, how many times do you differentiate instruction? Do you think if you have 22 kids? Sometimes they may say 22 times. Well, that's impossible. So your kids are automatically going to group themselves, right? I mean, just in nature, you may have 2 or 3 different ways. So instead of saying differentiation, I want to give you an example of what differentiation looks like. And I'm not saying that this is what you should do or could do or need to do, but let me say differentiation without differentiation. So imagine when you go out, let's put it into this. If I go out with my family, it's a special event, right? Birthday party or some other thing, it's a more formal dinner. We go, and when we get to the restaurant, before we order our meals, what do we order? Appetizer, right? Okay, or a drink if you're old enough, but appetizer. And then it's your what? Entree. And then it's your dessert, right? Appetizer, entree, dessert. Imagine this. You're a kid. When you come into a classroom, what's the first thing you do as a kid when you walk into a classroom? Warm up, objective, look for, focus, seat work, bell work, whatever, right? And then you do your lesson, and then you do your homework, if you want to call it fancy home opportunity, whatever. That's imagine this. Think about this for just a second. Imagine if you could, as a kid, walk into a classroom and on the appetizer board, there were 2 or 3 appetizers, all equally active, all equally engaging, all covering the same critical concept. They're just different. They're different things that allow me to gain the same mastery of that initial work that I want to do before the lesson starts. Some of those appetizers may be things that I eat by myself. Some of those appetizers may be things that I go and eat with a group, right? Or some of the appetizers may be a buffet of things. But mindfully, I design my appetizers, my warm-up, my focus, my objective, my seat work, my to-do, based on the needs of my kids. How they learn and how they learn best. All equally engaging, all equally active, all covering the same critical concepts. They are just different, right? So they come in, they grab their appetizer. If they eat that appetizer and they don't like it, it's not edible to them, what's it okay to do? And go grab another appetizer. I don't care what appetizers they grab as the chef of the restaurant. I just want them to eat an appetizer. And if they're done with an appetizer, what can they do? Go grab another one. If you're hungry, eat more. If you want to do something, eat more. Then at the restaurant, back again to the time with my family, I really, really like steak and sweet potatoes, right? Love it. If you give me a steak, a ribeye steak, don't cut off any fat. Make it medium. I don't want it too red, and I don't want it too done. Throw a little butter on if you want, but I don't like a lot of extra sauce or any of that other stuff on it. Give me that, and I love it. So when I go to a restaurant with my family, let's say we're all a family, and do I order for all of them? Do they have to eat a ribeye and a sweet potato? What do they order? What do you order?
Chicken parm.
Okay.
I would probably order a steak.
What kind?
Oh, probably a ribeye.
Okay.
I would also order a steak.
Okay.
Filet
What's the
mignon.
side?
I like sweet potatoes too.
Okay.
Filet mignon.
Okay, filet mignon. They order really what they eat, right? So how cool would it be in our classroom if the main content part of that, some of it is differentiated. Some of the meat part may be critical and I may have to deliver it all the same way. But maybe they have different side dishes. All equally active, all equally engaging, all covering the same critical concepts. They're just different based on my understanding of the kiddos that we have. And also understanding that there are going to be kids, if I plan it right, they're going to get it. There are going to be kids, if I plan it right at the right level of rigor, that aren't. there are going to be kids, if I plan it at the right level of rigor, that are going to kind of get it, right? You're getters, you're kind of getters, you're don't getters. I knew that going into it. I purposely planned for that. And so my entree is designed for that, because if you go into classrooms all across the United States, I would say probably about 85% of the people that are in those classrooms through no fault of their own probably should be ticketed. Because there's a group of kids they're killing right now because they don't plan right. And what group of kids is that? The getters. They're killing the kids that are getting it, because guess what happens when the kind of getters start surfacing and the don't getters start surfacing? What happens with the momentum? It stops, because we don't want to leave anybody behind. Well, we didn't do the planning purposefully, so we have to stop the learning that's going on. So when I'm designing my classroom and I'm really differentiating, however you want to do it, whatever mode you want to do it, I need to have food for my getters that they can go eat and continue to move forward with. And then for those kids that kind of get a stomach ache, I have to have some kind of Alka-Seltzer there, or Pepto-Bismol, or Tums, or Rolaids, something that I could make it more edible. I have to tweak those ingredients without everybody else, without pulling everybody's plate in front of them. You get what I'm saying? But I do all that work on what side? The front side. With-itness is awesome, but it shouldn't be normal. You should not have to use with-itness all the time in a classroom if you plan purposefully. So then at the very end, when do you all eat your dessert? When do you eat your dessert? When you're finished, right? Now, do you take all your dessert home? No. You may take some of it home. How cool would it be, though, if your kiddos could select from a couple different kinds of desserts, all equally active, all equally engaging, all covering the same critical concepts? The desserts just are different. And guess where they get a chance to taste them? In your classroom, where you, the chef, can tweak the ingredients so that it's edible for them. Because the last thing we really want to do is send kids home with something that's not edible, because a lot of kids don't have a chef at home that can do anything with the ingredients. The parents may or may not be there. They may or may not know the content. They may or not know any instructional strategies. We have to make sure it's edible. And if your kiddos eat that dessert in your class, that's cool. That's great if it's all done. That's all you wanted to accomplish, is that reinforcement or enrichment opportunity that they get. If they have to take it home, and if you look at the research on this, if you start actually eating your dessert in class, even if you don't finish it, you're more likely to finish eating that dessert or do that homework or home opportunity at home. Does that make sense? So that's trying to explain to you in different terms what differentiation, instead of using the buzzword, it looks like. Just putting things together that are different, that are all equally active, all equally engaging, all covering the same critical concepts. Things that may be done individually, may be done in pairs, may be done in groups. But it's based on the learners that you have and the learning styles that you understand, because guess who you really know in your classroom? Your kids. And that's what's going to help you design your lesson. So these are some of the things when we ask that question. Tell me about a lesson that went really well, and how did you come up with the idea? That is asked, and about 50% of the time it's changed. Instead of went really well, what do you think they'll ask? Went really poorly. And what they're listening for is, did you tie this to the standards that were there? Did you vary it to meet the needs of your kiddos? Was it driven by informal assessment? And give me an example of informal assessment. What can you do to informally know where your kids are at? And honestly, should never have to give any kind of assessment, if you're a formal assessment, to ever know where your kids are. You really should be able to say, if I gave them a test right now, this is where they would be at. So somebody said it, thumbs up, thumbs down. How else do you know? Exit slips, listening, constantly monitoring, and then as soon as you see something that doesn't look right, smell right, or taste right, what do you have to do? Intervene. you have to make that adjustment. That adjustment, because practice makes what? Practice makes, it doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. Only perfect practice is really what you want to focus on. Every single second that we allow kids to practice something wrong, it's harder and takes more time to undo it. So that's why informal assessment is so critical, that practice makes permanent. And you understand that because you just want them to practice the right thing. So you have to share that. And you don't need to talk a lot about standardized testing or anything like that. Be prepared to talk about parental involvement. And this is, I leave this up here, but this is a word that really, parental involvement went away years and years ago. And I'm not going to change this because it gives me my context clue to talk about it. What should that say? Instead of parental involvement, what's the better word? Parental, well, collaboration is great. It kind of means the same thing. So parental involvement moved to something that moved to something else. So what's the first something? Parental, getting parents starts with an E, E-N-G, engage. So a few years ago, maybe 3, 4, or 5, it would have said parental engagement because it went from involvement to engagement. But that's an old word. So if I were to change that now, I'd be changing back in time. What's a better word? Starts also with an E. Parental empowerment. So when you're there, you want to talk about how you're going to empower parents to help, because they're the first and best teachers for the kids. But they have to be empowered. And how do you empower parents? Keeping them informed, getting them involved in the understanding, in the process, and what their kids are going to do. And when I was a principal, now that was a while ago, but I still work with our principals on it, I would have parents come up, and it depended on what they were working on, is I would empower them by helping them get a GED, right? Helping them go back to school, helping them with mock interviews, helping them fill out job applications. Because even though those things may not directly have impacted their kids, if they get a better job and a better education, who's it going to help? It's their kids. Far more than me having them do math or science or reading. So I have to figure out, how am I going to empower my parents and what am I going to have them do? Really be prepared to talk about training. And what I have our principals do, I had them do it in HISD. I'm working with them in Tomball. I've only been there since April. Is when you're interviewed and I'm asking you questions, I'm like scripting on chart paper. Scripting on chart paper. Not all the questions, but like at the campus, a few of the critical ones. And then I want them to laminate that and give it to you so they can put that up in your classroom. Because you remember you said you were going to do these things, right? So I'm going to hold you accountable for how are you going to actively engage students in their learning, right? And a lot of times that's a good coachable moment for our principals because they want to hear engagement. And sometimes that's a worse thing. I really just dread going in and seeing engagement if it's not coupled with hands-on, minds-on. If the engagement isn't at the right level, you're just wasting time. It may be fun, but is it purposeful? So hands-on, minds-on. Put that up on the wall. Does that make sense? Whatever engagement you do, it has to be done purposefully. So be prepared to talk about those things. Remember, I said you're all reading teachers. I've got a few minutes left and I'm going to answer questions. Portfolios, evaluations, your portfolios are electronic, right? Right? I would have something, half-inch binder, not a monster, not intimidating, but just your best work. In addition to your best resume, things you're proud of. And that would be, I would be proud of a lesson that I tore apart, that I implemented and I have red markings on. I would have pictures, as long as it's okay with the kiddos that you're working with, of you working with kids so they can visualize that. Hey, if I were to walk into your classroom on any given day, what would you be doing and what would the kids be doing? Well, if you were to walk into my classroom, here's what my classroom looks like. Very print-rich, hands-on, minds-on, scaffolding upon the learning that's occurring, and an active engaging with a purpose. Okay, I would show them those pictures that could do that. Criminal background. So this is part of always the hardest part, and I have to get to this before I leave, even if I skip everything else. Every school district will do a criminal background check on you. Okay, if you have anything in your past, make sure on the online application you say you did, okay? And it's okay as long as you say you did. And then get those court documents. Now, don't bring that up to your principals. They don't see that part of the application. The only people that will see that part of the application are the people at the Human Resources, Human Capital, Human Talent Group. They're the only ones that see it. Every one of us knows that people aren't perfect and that things happen and people make mistakes. So what you want to do when it comes to that question, if you've done anything, and there's no age limit. So if you did something at 16, then we're going to see it. We're going to see something you did at 16. That's not going to ever keep you from getting a job. What will keep you from getting a job is if you say what? No. And if you say you haven't done anything, it's not that you did something that didn't keep you from getting the job. It's that you didn't say that you did it, right? So you want to make sure that you answer yes, you have those documents ready. You don't bring that up to anybody else, and you only need to bring that up to the Human Resources Department if they ask you about it. A lot of times, I got a DUI, I got minor in possession, I wrote a bad check, blah, 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 whatever it is, that's life. You want to make sure that you disclose it, and if they see that your answer was aligned with what you did, they may not even ever ask you about it, okay? I see this come back and haunt people more than anything else, is this part of it here, okay, this criminal background check. Okay, I'm going to say this and I'm going to answer some questions. When you are, I'm just going to show you that part, I'm not going to answer. When you get asked the question, just answer it. Don't give them a canned answer. Don't say what you think they want to hear. Like, genuinely answer it how you would answer it. If I were to walk in your classroom on any given day, what would you be doing? What would the kids be doing? I would tell them what would be happening if they were to walk in my classroom. Because the last thing you want to do is get a job as somebody else, because you're going to get fired as yourself, right? So you want to find the right fit for you. You want that person to love you for who you are and what you're going to bring to the table. The other thing you want to make sure that you are as a person is you want to be coachable. I don't care who the best person in here is, there's room for improvement. And if you have people that really truly care about you, they're going to tell you what it is. Human nature is like, we want to justify, we want to like get defensive, we want to like, well, I really am trying. That's okay. I'll get all that, but I want you to be better than that. And that's where you want to be, is coachable. If people care about you, they're going to have those critical conversations with you. Okay? So what questions have come to mind? This is really, we could spend all day off and on in here. What questions come to mind that you may have for me about anything, about securing student teaching, about the student teaching itself, about getting a job? What questions do you have? Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question. Like, with the criminal background check, would that count speeding tickets?
No. I may or may not have those. They don't count. Now, they'll count if you're going like 1,000 in a school zone. I mean, you know, you have to, it's all relevant, right? So if it's a big ticket item, then just put it on there. Yes, ma'am.
What's the one thing you would look for a new student teacher that you're hiring? What's the most important thing to you?
Yep. So what's important to me when I talk to somebody is somebody that's passionate, that is coachable, that's dedicated, and that's really done more than just the bare minimum. That's really what I want and I want people that want to be the best. And it's hard. It's a hard gig, you all. I know you're going to sense it. Don't give up, though. And if you want to give up, guess what you are? You're normal. Like when you start doing this and you're questioning yourself, you're normal. If you're putting the heart, time, and effort in this, you're always going to think, God, do I really want to do this? Like, do I really? I still feel that way sometimes. And then I reflect. And then I celebrate my wins. And then I look back at what people have said, and I'm like, I'm so thankful. Your journey that you're going to be on, I always put it in these two different ways. You can get in your journey on a toll road, right, with the easy tag thing, so you don't have to stop to put any coins in an Audi Q7 and go 85 to 100 miles an hour and get to where you're going to be. Or you might get on that bike that has kind of low tires, that has one speed, and it goes down this trail that's kind of muddy, that you can't see beyond the next hill, that's full of brush, and that takes some time where you have to get off, you have to push, you have to, you sweat, you're thirsty, you get tired, your legs get sore, it's miserable at times, but all of a sudden you go through this last trail and you're at your destination. And that's a pretty awesome ride. That hard ride sometimes is the best ride to take. And the only way you could prepare for that hard ride is by doing what you're doing now with fidelity. Doing what you're doing from this point on as robustly as you can to be the best that you can, and never settle for, like, I'm where I'm at. But celebrate your wins. Like, be, and the only other thing I'm going to say is you're all teachers, right? And we're held to a different standard. The days of going to the club and doing silly stuff, they got to be over. Or go someplace like in a foreign land with no media so that it can't be captured, because people will look at you, fair or not, they're looking at you through a different lens. And you always have to be mindful. Everything we do has a consequence. It's either good or it's bad. And we learn from our mistakes and we celebrate the things that we're doing good. I am so thankful. I love you, and I do. And I've known Dr. Rackley forever, and she is phenomenal. Y'all are in great hands. And a lot of these people in the back are phenomenal as well.
Thank you very much. We're very, very fortunate to have Mr. McKenna, who was just telling me that he considered, threw around a position in a district, 11,000, how many schools in that district?
Well, so I had a chance to go to New York, 1,100, 1.1 million kids. I'm a small town. Houston, small.
That's a district. One district.
New York.
In New York. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Parrish is here with the clinical teaching office, and she's going to come in and talk to you about clinical teaching. And there's some guy back there in a red shirt with no glasses.
Oh, can I ask one favor? Can I ask one favor?
Absolutely.
So, y'all, my boss, I told her I was going to do this, and she's a big Aggie. And so what I would love to do is, if you're okay, if I say team, you say Tomball. Can you do that for me? Anybody from Tomball, by the way? Okay. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to start this. I'm going to say team, and then can you all just yell Tomball, and I'll get out of here. Okay. Team. Tomball. Awesome. Y'all have a great day.
I need to see Lexi Contreras if you're here for just a second. You come by me.
And I need to visit with two students Lindsay Reischer, and Alexandra Garcia. Would you raise your hand, please?
You can ignore that for the most part. Eventually it'll be unable to identify it as a keyboard, but it'll let you use it as a clicker.
Gotcha.
Identifying your keyboard. You gonna be okay?
I'm trying.
Out of state, like for me, they're like, no, I know you might probably sort of have to take it, but I was looking online and I was discussing like Texas is like exchange in other states that are open. Okay, so what do I, do you know anything about that or who I can just ignore? Okay, thank you so much. Well, they're forcing
Oh.
Oh, flip them.
Can you not handle that?
Howdy. Okay, clap. What's that? All right, so I'm just going to talk briefly about advising and the requirements that each and every one of you have to come by and see my advisors as soon as possible so we can clear you for clinical teaching. Here we are right here, and as you know, we have emails and stuff. The way to set up an appointment is still through SWAN. That might be changing later on this semester, but it's a calendar where you go to swan.tamu.edu, and hopefully one of us will be available. In a perfect world, you would come in either next week or the following week, and hopefully we'll get to see most of you by then. Of course, if you're not able to set up an appointment, just keep on trying, but each and every one of you need to come by so we can clear you for clinical teaching. It just so happens that each semester about 20 or 30 don't come in, and Ms. Parrish and I will be in touch with you, and you might get your placements late, so get on it and set up an appointment. So I mentioned the best thing is to try to get in as soon as possible. We have spaces available through the 21st. Unfortunately, as you know, the calendar only allows up to 7 days in advance. Just remember that. We see students Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 4, and we have walk-ins. We have one walk-in advisor, 8:30 to 11 on Fridays. It is really not set up for mandatory advising, but definitely for you guys, for getting cleared, you can do that, and we'll do our best to get you in and out as soon as possible. And of course, we're located in Heaton Hall. So, each and every one of you will be clinical teaching the spring of 2019. Yes, sir? I'm sorry, what? Can we raise the slide up a little bit? The IT guy says no. So I'm not an IT guy, but the IT guy says no. Anyway, so all classes have to be completed prior to clinical teaching. Each and every one of you should have completed their coursework other than senior methods this past summer. There's no exceptions to the rule. If you have not completed your coursework prior to clinical teaching, you will not be clinical teaching this spring semester. I've seen quite a few students already, but it's very, very simple. If you happen to be early childhood and you want to register for 6 hours, that's the number of hours required on all of our degree programs for clinical teaching. You would register for TEFB 426. If you are staying in the local area, which I believe is within 35 miles, you will register for section 500. If you are at a distance, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, etc., section 550. If you are middle grades, math, science, language arts and social studies, and if you're an English major, language arts, you would register for MEFB 497, the same thing. Local placement section 500, distant 550. If you happen to be Aggie Teach, university studies, and you know who you are, you can also register for 6 hours. If you need 9 hours because you need an elective, as long as the Aggie Teach people have said that's fine, then we'll allow you to register for 9 hours of clinical teaching. But the minimum number is 6. And even though the Aggie Teach students are getting certified 7th through 12th grade, when you register for MEFB 497, it'll say middle grades. Don't freak out. It's just a requirement to register for clinical teaching. The TEED 425, which is 12 hours, is primarily for those students who are getting some form of financial aid. When we use the word financial aid nowadays, it really incorporates everything from Pell Grants and other federal grants. It includes scholarships. It includes subsidized and unsubsidized loans. The TEED 425 is really not for those students who are paying by cash, paying by credit card, and or receiving some form of scholarship. Generally speaking, the scholarships will pay off on just 6 hours. But if you are getting Pell Grant money, federal monies of any kind, you need a loan, you have to register for 12 hours. You will be charged for 12 hours. 6 hours of clinical teaching is approximately $2,500, give or take $100 here or there. So family members like parents will be happy about that. If it's 12 hours, you'll be charged for a full schedule, which is about $5,000 or thereabouts. We will also remind you about this when you come in to be cleared for clinical teaching. So we talked about the 6 hours. I talked about that because a lot of parents will go, is that full-time? Is that part-time? You know, and basically because it is clinical teaching, Texas A&M University sees certain things as full-time. What do they see as full-time? They see full-time students as those registering for 12 or 15 hours. They see full-time students as those who are registered for less than 12 hours but are in, for example, an approved internship. Those who are doing clinical teaching. So if you're in 6 hours, A&M sees that as full-time because it's clinical teaching and you're registered for 6 hours. The federal government does not see it as full-time, and that's why we've given you the option, which is mentioned again on that PowerPoint, to register for 12 hours. Of course, we've appreciated your hard work in your undergraduate studies. If you are interested in continuing your education now or maybe in the future, Dr. Radhika Varuru is in charge of the online Masters of Education program, which can be done, as it says, entirely and utterly online. You don't even need to be here for that. If you're interested, you can email her or you can just send an email to tlacgant, which is graduate advisor at tamu.edu. And that is it. Does anybody have a quick question before I go? Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what the cost is for out-of-state tuition?
Okay, so I'll give you an example of that. The answer is not specifically, but I've got one of my students is paying out-of-state tuition not because the person happens to be out of state, but because they've gone over and above the number of hours. If you go above 150 or 153 or 155, depending on your degree program, you pay out-of-state tuition. So 6 hours will be about $5,500 for out-of-state tuition. In-state, $2,400, out-of-state, about $55. That's what I saw the other day. Does that? No? Does that help a little bit? It's more than double. Yes. Well, it's just like a regular semester, yes. But no, but less than you'd be paying right now for a regular semester. Anybody else have a quick question before I go? Yes, ma'am.
So if you are one of the people who do the 12 hours or is that on your transcript of the 12 hours or?
Well, when you look at your degree evaluation, what we do is we just use 6 hours of it to fulfill the number of hours required for your degree program, and the other 6 hours will just be hanging around in work not applied. It will show up when you register as 12 hours. You don't do double the work. You just do the same amount of work that everybody else does. Okay? But you will end up having 6 hours floating around in work not applied. Yes?
In the appointment that we would make to be cleared for clinical teaching, would that also be an appointment that would be appropriate to discuss being a non-degree seeking student?
Yes, yes. For all, thank you for bringing that up. For all the students who happen to be Aggie Teach in University Studies, some of you can graduate December 2018. This is an example just because, and we will fill out a form for that, and whoever you speak to will let you know about that. It's a very simple process. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. You're signing up. Yes, no, you're just signing up for that one. All righty. I wish you guys well. See you soon. So can I go now?
Do you want to do?
Is it the one on the right?
Don't be focused on me. Howdy. My name is Kim Parrish, and our office will be responsible for starting today, carrying on the conversation to get you through graduation. So Mary Ronsonay also works in our office, and we will start talking today about what clinical teaching is going to look like and the process to get ready for that. And then we will be, I'll be your instructor of record for the actual semester of clinical teaching, so you will get lots of communication from the two of us from here until May. A couple of housekeeping things. This PowerPoint will be made available to you guys. It will be made available so you can go back and refer. We'll also send an email.
Yes, ma'am.
Why don't you usually take over?
No, ma'am. I'm sorry.
So, totally lost my train of thought, thanks. The PowerPoint will be available, and you will get an email from us after this meeting saying our records, as long as you turn in this sign-in sheet, the sheet that you got when you came in, an email from us early next week that says our records indicate you attended this meeting, you're on track to be a clinical teacher, and here's the link to the application. So the information we're going to share today is just kind of starting point, and you will have access to this moving forward. I'm going to talk really briefly about certification. Unfortunately, Misty Korn is sick. I know you guys have all heard from her probably at least once, if not multiple times, leading up to today. So the main thing is you have to have your exam passed by October 15th to be cleared for the spring for clinical teaching. That's your primary content exam. Okay? If you have not started that process, this is where you will get started on that. So make sure if you have not started. There were quite a few, I think like 66 of you guys that have not met that expectation up to this point, and you should have received an email from us this week saying this is where your status is according to our office, and acknowledge this requirement. So if you got an email from us and you have not met that expectation, make sure you get started going to this. If you have not already, the testing options are changing. Pearson is taking over, so starting next week, you will have to set up a new account and start taking your test through their windows. My understanding is that there will be more options as far as every test will be a CAT test, so it'll be offered continuously. I don't know that 100%, but that's the impression we've been given. So effective next week, we will know that. Also, for you guys that have to take your PPR still, that will all be done through Pearson. So, but by October 15th, you've got to pass your primary. That's non-negotiable. You will have to have a passing score. The last date you can test is the 15th of October. We'll get results back that next week, and if you are not successful, then you'll get an email from us that says you will no longer be considered a spring clinical teacher, and if you want to be a fall clinical teacher, we'll be in touch, and you'll visit with your advisor about what that will look like. Also, by October 15th, you need to complete the PPR exam information form, which is on that same My CEHD. So that will get you cleared so that Misty can go in and set you up to be cleared to take your PPR. You do not have to take that before you start clinical teaching. You can take it in December once you're finished with senior methods before you're geared up for clinical teaching if you choose. It just has to be passed before you are recommended for certification. Okay, doesn't even have to be passed before you graduate, but it does have to be passed before you're recommended by Misty to the state to be certified. So I would plan your schedule. You guys have at least a day off during this semester if you're in senior methods that you could take that test because it's a CAT test offered every day, a couple of times a day. You cannot miss a day of clinical teaching to go take that test. So if you do not take it this semester or during your winter break, you'll need to take it during spring break or on a Saturday. You cannot miss a day of clinical teaching to go take that exam. Okay? Any questions about testing requirements, PPR? There's some resources if you need guidance in preparing for the PPR. Some options for studying and preparing for that test. Yes?
The answer's not to graduate, no, but we highly recommend it for employment.
I would be willing to gauge that most school districts are going to require it, so I would go ahead and have that as a big check and a big star. Yes? No, the only test you have to take by October 15th is your primary content. So if you're middle grades, 4-8, English Social Studies, that's the only test you have to take and pass. You can take your EC6, but you don't have to. Okay, just your primary content exam. Yes? Ms. Korn can pull that up and share that with us, so yes. Any other questions about certification? So if you have other questions or you need guidance on that, of how to get set up, where you are, things like that, Misty Korn. Next screen.
I have a quick question. Can you certify in something else after you pass your primary?
So,
Yes.
no,
Once you're.
not until you graduate.
Not until
You
after you
have,
graduate.
so A&M can only recommend you for certification for where we have prepared you. So if you're in middle grades. So if you're in middle grades 4-8, then you can take the 4-8 test. Once you graduate, we recommend you for certification and you are certified by the state. You can go in and do what is called exam-only certification, and you can take whatever test you want, and if you pass it, but you have to be completely certified first.
Is the ESL included in that?
No, that's a supplemental. Yes. Yes. Justin says same thing. After. Ms. Rankin, do you know that answer? A GT? Yes. Okay. Yes.
Okay, just for clarification. So I took my fourth grade math and science test, and then I've also taken the EC through 6 test. So, but I did it before I graduated. That's okay?
Oh, that's great.
Well, sorry, you said that.
You don't have to.
That was, so what the meaning was, the 4th through 8th grade people, we allow them to take the EC through 6 test, but the 4th through 8th is your content test.
Okay.
That's the only one you're required to pass by October 15th.
But before graduation, you can take any test, right?
No. If you're a 7-12 Aggie Teach person and you want to teach elementary, you cannot go back and take that test until after graduation and you're completely certified. But we gave you, if you're a 4-8 person, permission to take the EC6. But you cannot be certified in EC6 until you graduate. and are completely certified as a 4-8 student.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So you can take the test, but you are not certified EC6 until you are completely certified 4-8 by the state, and then you go back and add your EC6, even though you've already passed the test, because we didn't directly prepare you for EC6, but we gave you permission so that you're considered highly qualified. No? Yes? So a lot of school districts require you, if you're teaching 4th, 5th, and you're on an elementary campus, to be highly qualified, so you have to pass that EC6 test. So while we didn't give you all the curriculum to prepare you to be EC6 certified, we are allowing you to take the exam so that you're more marketable when you go to a job interview. Okay? Ms. Korn can explain that a lot better. So if you want even more details, she can share. Anything else about certification that we can try to answer? No? Okay. All right, moving on. So I'm going to talk today specifically about the application process to get you guys ready to be clinical teachers and what that's going to look like. So we have two options, as Justin mentioned. You can stay what we would consider local, which is within a 35-mile radius of Bryan College Station. So Bryan College Station, Mumford, Snook, Navasota, Franklin, Caldwell. So anywhere within 35 miles where we have a partnership, that is considered local placement. Local has expanded to make you more marketable. If you've only been at Bryan College Station, then our goal is to get you another district experience as much as we can. So based on numbers in the past spring, depends on how many of you guys stay local, that will dictate how many are placed out. Once we fill all the outside spaces, we may end up putting some people in Bryan College Station, just depending on numbers. Okay? There's the list of the districts. If you are placed in an outlying district outside of Bryan College Station, there will be at least 3 of you with the district so that you have the option to carpool. Distance districts are partners that we have around the state who have signed agreements with us, who are willing to host Aggies, who we have a relationship with. We have a supervisor on board, and that's kind of the list that is on the sheet of paper that you have. Those are already partnering districts that will welcome Aggies onto their campus. So if you're interested in going to one of those, that will be an option on the application. You'll just select your primary first choice. You'll also do a second choice and a third choice. But those partnerships are already set up. You don't have to go and do any research or reach out to those districts. If they're on the partnership agreement and they're on the application already, you're good. Occasionally, districts will reach capacity. They will only be able to take a certain number of Aggies because they're either getting students from another university or they just have a limited number of space. Sometimes it's totally dependent on certifications as well. If 10 English social studies students all wanted to go to one district, they may not be able to host everybody. So occasionally people do not get their first choice, and so your application will reflect a second district choice and a third district choice. We will send everyone's application that submits it on time to their first district choice, and typically people are given their first choice. If the first choice is not an option, we will contact you and say we have provided your application to the next district choice. So you will know if we've had to move on to your other options for placement. Yes? We do not currently have a partnership with them. So I will talk about that though in just a second. So, and that's what this slide says. If there is a district that you're interested in being placed with for clinical teaching and it's not on the list and it's more than 35 miles from a district that is on the list, then we can talk after the meeting. We'll have another small meeting to talk about what that looks like. We'll need information from you and just kind of talk through that process. But it has to be more than 35 miles district to district. So if you're wanting to go to a district that borders a partnering district, that's not an option, okay? So it has to be more than 35 miles from one district to another district. So West Texas, the border, those kind of places could potentially be options because we don't have established partnerships there. Okay? All right, as far as placement, if you're planning to leave us and things do not go great this semester, if you're put on a growth plan, you will be expected to stay local. If you do not get everything in on time and we don't have all of your paperwork and we submit to all the districts and your application rolls in late, those districts may reach capacity, and so you may be expected to stay local for clinical teaching as well. All right, what all impacts your placement? Obviously, your certification, you will be placed within your primary certification. So if you're a 4-8 person, even though you think you may want to teach second, you're still going to be placed 4-8, okay? So you will be within your certification. If you are requesting to go to a distance district, a lot of times those placements are dictated and made based on the supervisor and where they're located within the district. Also, certain districts kind of cluster universities by schools. And so if you want to go to Cy-Fair, huge district, they may put all the Aggies in the northwest part of Cy-Fair. You may live in the southwest part, but you may be driving. So there are a lot of factors that go into making placements. You will have the option to make requests, but just realize that supervisor location does play a part in where you are placed. Also, mentor teacher availability. They have to have a mentor teacher that wants to host and is qualified to host. And so that plays a part as well that districts and that we make to place you. Districts at a distance do the placements. We share the applications with them and they actually make the placements based on your request and their availability. Where you've been placed before will play a role. So on the application, it will ask you where you completed junior methods, senior methods, or any other early field experiences, and that is all taken into consideration as well. Make sure you get any form, any paperwork, anything turned in on time, meet all deadlines. Advising deadline, like Justin said, you want to be checked off by September 21st to be cleared for advising. The application will be submitted. Any kind of paperwork that our office needs or that is due during senior methods, make sure you're meeting all those deadlines as well. Obviously, passing your primary content exam by the 15th of October. On the application as well, there's a special considerations text box, and you can make requests there. You are welcome to say and put any special requests that you have. They will be considered, but there's no guarantees. So it will be impacted by lots of things, but you are welcome to make requests. You will do a grade level preference. You'll do a subject level preference as part of the application as well. As far as being supervised, so wherever you complete clinical teaching around the state, whether it's here or at a distance, we as A&M will hire the supervisor that will come out and do your observations. And they will follow a T-test model. They've been through a T-test training, which is what all teachers are, that's the evaluation system in place now in the state. So the model that we use is framed based on that teacher model. We will hire, pay, train those supervisors that come out and do. So whether you stay here or you're off, you will be getting the same quality supervision. If we cannot find a supervisor in the area that meets our qualifications, that may impact your placement. So if you're wanting to go somewhere and we don't have a supervisor and we cannot find a supervisor that is qualified, we may have to find a new placement for you. Okay? All right, the actual application is all done online. You will make sure you put your primary phone, your cell number. We'll set you up on a Remind app so that we'll send you reminders when things are due, anything upcoming. Also use your A&M email. If you are a current student at A&M, make sure you're using your TAMU email. It will ask certification area. Make sure you put your primary certification area. If you're secondary, be specific on what program you're in and what certification you're in. If you're 712 biology, so that we're making sure that we're putting you in the correct placement. It will ask you to rank your 3 top districts if you're going away from Bryan-College Station. If you're staying local, you will rank all of them. They'll all be listed and you will go 1 through 8 or 9, however many there are. You'll rank your districts by preference. It will also ask grade preferences, so you can preference grades. So if you're 4-8, you can pick 4th is your first and 5th is your second. If you're EC6, it'll be everything from pre-K up, so you will have the option to rank your grades as well. It will ask for your zip code. If you know it, if you're leaving this area, or even if you're staying here and you know the zip code where you will be living, that could potentially help in your placement, especially if you're going to a large district. Yes?
What if your zip code's out of state?
Then leave it blank. This is just to help in the placement process. So if you were going to move to, I don't know, Louisville ISD, huge school district. So if they're getting applications and they look and see where your zip code is, that could help with the placement process. It's just one more piece of the puzzle, but not required. But if you know where you're going to be, you can include that. Make sure you vary your preferences from where you've been in early field. The goal is to get you as well-rounded and as marketable as possible. So if you've already been in kinder and first grade, then I definitely would see a testing grade level for clinical teaching. So make sure that you vary your placement preferences based on where you have already been. Like I said, special considerations, that is just an open text box. You can request anything you want. Realize that information will be shared with the district, though. So whatever you type there, if it goes to a school district, they will read that. So be thoughtful in how you phrase that information. There will be 4 open-ended questions at the end that you are expected to be thoughtful, edit, revise, be really clear, and at least a paragraph. That is going to be a lot of the school district's first impression of you. They're going to get this piece of paper, and that's how they're going to judge you. And so one of the questions is 3 words to describe you and elaborate. Like, I think it's 3 words to describe your teaching style, and then elaborate. So don't just list 3 words. When it says elaborate, that means what does that look like for you? So they're going to get those applications. We're going to look at those applications, but I'm not going to send applications back that aren't done well unless it's really bad and say this needs to be revised. So just remember that's kind of your first impression going out. Once it's submitted, you'll get an email confirming. It's a Google Doc, so you'll get an email as long as you put in your correct email address, and you will get a kind of a snapshot of the answers that you've included for the application. If you want to edit the application, once you hit submit, it says edit your response or submit another response. As long as you keep that, you can go back and edit. If you don't keep that, then you would have to start the process over. So if you fill out the application, close the window, get the email, and realize you've had multiple typos or you clicked the wrong school district or made any kind of error, you can go in and submit your application again. So I definitely would, 1, save your 4 question responses in a Word doc or Google Doc, whatever. Save those so that you can copy and paste. The other thing is we're going to pull the most current application. So if you decide next week you're going to fill out the application, you hit submit, and a week later you realize, I'm going to change my plans, I want to go somewhere different, or change grade levels, or make any other changes, whatever the most current application that is submitted is the one we're going to pull. Okay? So you can do as many as you want. We're going to sweep the most current when we sweep them at the due date. Okay? Can you request a specific school and teacher? Yes, that would be a special consideration. You are more than welcome to ask for what you would like. No guarantees, but that may help in the placement process. You cannot be placed on a campus with an immediate relative. So if you are moving home and your mom is a teacher at an elementary school, don't ask to be placed at that elementary school. Okay? Questions about that? Sometimes come up. No? Okay. Working during clinical teaching, highly not ideal, but we know that sometimes that will happen. If you have to work, just make sure it cannot impact or in a negative way influence your clinical teaching experience. So you can't leave clinical teaching early to go to a job. Weekends are probably best, but I'm sure you guys all have friends that are in clinical teaching now, and they can tell you you're exhausted. It's a full-time job, and if you had to go to another job after your long day, you would be really tired. So hopefully you have a way to not have to work during that 70-day window, but if you do, just realize clinical teaching, while you're not getting paid, it's still your first priority and your first job. First day of clinical teaching for the spring We've looked at most school calendars, and the first start date with students in the classroom for most schools is January 7th. So you can expect that to be your start date. If you're choosing a school and it is an earlier start, or maybe some school districts may not be starting until the 8th or 9th of that week of the 7th, then you will start, your official first day will be the first day students are in the class with you. Okay? And it's 70 class days from day one until you're finished. Any day that you miss has to be made up. So I'm just going to say, do not plan a great trip to Europe on your 71st day if you count days and plan a trip, because if you get sick, you have to make that day up. We had 2 people that had to cancel major trips because of unexpected absences during this semester. So you don't want to disappoint your parents or your friends or whoever you've made plans with. So 70 days are required. If you miss a day and it's an excused absence, then you make up 1 day. So if you miss a day, you're sick, you have a car accident on the way to school, and you have to go to the doctor, if you miss a day, you make up 1 day at the end. Okay? If it's an unexcused absence, anything that's not Student Rule 7, which you guys know, unexcused, if you miss a day, it's 2 days make up at the end. No more than 3, actually no more than 2 unexcused absences. Okay? So if you are sick, we have students that miss an entire week. That week makes up at the end of the semester. Okay? That's a TEA. That's not an A&M rule. TEA's gone from 60 days to 65. Now they're to 70. So 70 days in the field. Questions about that? Yes?
Do we have to go to staff development days before the classes start?
Do you have to? No. Are you encouraged to? Absolutely. No. The only days that, but I mean, that's your first impression. I mean, that would be where I would say I would be jumping in and saying, I'm full speed ahead and ready to be here and ready to work. So any staff development day after the semester starts, so if they have a staff development day, President's Day, kids don't come, but the teachers are there and your mentor teacher is going to be there and you attend, that day does count. So staff development days, once the semester, 70-day semester starts, does count. Okay? Questions about attendance, expectations, requirements? Yes?
You just go for 70 days and then you're done? Just making sure.
Yes. So 70 is your minimum number. So some of you guys, just depending on school, everybody's start and end date, most, I would say 90% of you guys will start on the 7th of January. It just happens that way, the way the semester calendars have fallen out. This fall, we have kids that started as early as the 14th and some that didn't start till the 28th. So we have 2-week difference. The people that started on the 28th with holidays and Thanksgiving, they are finishing the week of graduation. So if they get sick and miss a week, they're not even going to have their 70 days in before they graduate. It depends on the circumstance, yeah. So for you guys, though, because you're starting on the 7th of January, you should finish late April with spring break in there and other holidays that don't count. You should finish with a couple of weeks before graduation. Yes? Career fair. You're required to come to career fair, which is one of the days during this semester. Other than that, we do not have any group meetings. No. Yeah, good question. Okay, any other questions about attendance, expectations? So that is a TEA policy, okay? We're just upholding the policy. You will have an attendance log that you will submit to us before you're cleared for graduation that you fill out each day. The time you get there, the time you leave, your mentor teacher will initial it. Your supervisor will sign off at the end of the semester. We have to have that documentation. Yes? Yes, it's on a Monday. It is a requirement of clinical teaching, though, that you attend. It won't be included as your 70, so you'll still do 70 days in your classroom. Yes. Yes. Career fair will be on a Monday, I think, November 12th. It's on a screen in just a second. No, that's this semester. We haven't set the springs. Okay, any other questions about attendance before we move on? Yes?
If you've already gone to a career fair, do you still have to go to the required one?
Yes. Yes, it is a requirement of clinical teaching. Okay. All right, so some due dates. The application that you guys will fill out for us is due on the 21st of September, the same day, that you should have already done your mandatory advising. Okay, so 3 weeks from today, application due, advising due. We will meet again in this room on November 9th. Y'all have another senior methods workshop, and we will start our meeting immediately after that meeting. And then the October 15th deadline to pass your primary content exam. So those are critical dates upcoming. Any questions about those dates? Yes. That's something totally different. Yeah. Okay, so that's the application due date. Testing due date. Advising due date. You will not be cleared and receive your placement for clinical teaching until you've attended both these meetings, been to advising, passed your exam, submitted your application, and then if the school district requires any paperwork of you. So a lot of school districts, the larger districts, have their own application for clinical teaching. So you'll fill out an application for us. We send it to Frisco ISD. A week later, Frisco ISD may send you an email and say, here's our application, fill this out. We need to know more about you. We need to do your background clearance, all those things. So we'll have expectations. Other district expectations will follow. Okay? Our website is on the MyCEHD site. The application and then certification information has already been listed on a slide earlier. And like I said, this will be posted once everybody's come to the makeup meeting. Few other things I want to talk about. Career fair this semester. So current clinical teachers are going to be attending a required career fair on Monday, November 12th. You guys are encouraged to come. It's a great opportunity to come and see what you will be coming to in the spring, to get a feel for the layout, the setup, who the recruiters are, what they're asking. Great opportunity to come and observe and participate in not in a job-seeking manner, but just getting comfortable in that environment. Yes? Your methods professor will go over that. My understanding is you can get a half day to come in the morning, but confirm that with your methods instructor, because I don't want to misspeak. We do have an opportunity if you want to be a host for the event. There will be a small stipend that will be added to your clinical teaching semester if you come and help us, because our office puts the event on. So you would come into our office and help us prep for it one day, and then at the day of the event, you are actually serving as a host or hostess. You're assigned a set group of districts, and you just kind of make sure that they're good, they don't need anything. Visit with them, learn, walk them to their space, show them where breakfast is. Great opportunity to talk to recruiters on an informal level, ask them questions, get to know them. We've had quite a few people that have experienced that, come back the next semester, interviewed with those people that they already had relationships with and gotten jobs from this kind of informal relationship during career fair during your semester prior. So if you're interested in learning more about that, we will send an application out. At the top of your sheet that you've been given that you're going to turn in for today's attendance, write career fair really big across the top, and we'll include you in an email with more information about that. Question about career fair? Yes. Occasionally in the fall, spring, we always have some out of state, even out of country, people that come recruiting teachers. Yes. Any other questions about career fair? Yes. Okay. It will just depend on numbers. So it's totally dictated by how many of you guys asked to stay local, and then how many placements we have in the outlying districts, and where all those certifications fit. And then if everybody cannot get placed in the outline, then we use Bryan College Station. Yes, you can still definitely preference Bryan and College Station, but whatever you put as your third, make sure that that's the one that you really are good to go to or would like to go to. But once again, there's no guarantee, because if you're a 4-8 math science and you pick Franklin as your first or second or third choice, and they don't have any 4-8 math science teachers that put in an application, that's not an option. Okay, yes? On our application, we ask. It'll ask, do you have a relative, and then if so, what school? So that'll be shared with the district so they know. Yeah, good question. Yes?
Can you prep like first and second local and third non-local?
No. You're either local or distance. So if you're going to stay here, then you're going to rank all the locals. If you're leaving us, you're going to rank all the top 3 distance. Yes?
Does it matter what position your family member has in the school? Like if your family member was a counselor at a high school, then...
Still can't be on that. You can't be on that campus. Okay. You can be in the district. You cannot be on the same campus. Okay. Just can be political. We've unfortunately had that happen. Yes?
So is our first preference going to be whatever we fill out right now?
No. Right. So what you're turning in today to us just gives us a guesstimate. It just helps us kind of gauge where we are with locals and distance numbers. What you actually put on the application is what we're going to look at. So today's form documents that you are here for us, lets us know about career fair, and gives us an idea of where you think you're going, but it is definitely not your final say. So your application will be your final request. Yes? That would be an immediate relative, yes. You do not want to be placed at an elementary school where you've got a sibling. Correct. Yes. Yes. Yes, if they work on the campus, you cannot be placed there. If they're a secretary or a cafeteria worker or a teacher or a principal. Anybody that is getting paid on that campus to work, you cannot be placed on that campus with. Questions? Yes? You cannot be on the same campus if they're a relative of yours. Yeah. Any other questions about that? Okay, our office is in Heaton Hall on the opposite side of advising. So if you have questions, you're welcome to stop by our office. The easiest way is to email. You should have all received an email from clinical teaching about this meeting. And so once you do the application, you'll also get text from us. So any other, yes? I would, because we'll have some tidbits on that, probably just helpful information. So a couple of things, that's it? Okay, so if you are interested in being placed in a district that is not on that list, meaning it's not local, it's not one of the distance districts, and it is more than 35 miles, you need to stay. I'm going to meet with you separately. Okay? Okay, hold on just a second. If there is a district within 35 miles, we're not setting up a new partnership. Correct. So if you live and there's a district that's within 35 miles any direction, we're not setting up a new partnership. Correct. Yes. It's district to district. So the border of the district to the next border of the district. And here's the thought behind that. If you're staying local and you live in South College Station, you may get put in Franklin. District to district, A&M or Bryan ISD to Franklin is within 35 miles. You may be driving 48 miles to get there based on where you live in the actual school, but district to district is within 35 miles. Yes. Okay? So make sure that your sign-in sheet gets turned in. If you are staying for this extra meeting, hold on to your sheet so that we can talk about what else is expected of you. Okay? Email from us next week.